Welcome to the Birth Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Hoff, BSN RN. I am a wife, a mother of two, and a nurse specializing in the care of women and newborns. In this podcast, we will share powerful journeys of birth givers with the goals of lifting the veil on the birth experience, healing through sharing, and beginning an open conversation to strengthen trust and promote transparency between birthing people and healthcare providers. Hello! Today I have with me Marie Carle. Marie is the mother of three, and when she delivered her babies, she had a career in marketing where she worked for 20 years, and then she became a labor and delivery nurse. Today, Marie is here to share her birth stories. She delivered her babies before she became a labor and delivery nurse, which means that now she is able to reflect on those experiences with additional insight. Marie, welcome, and thank you for joining me.
Hi, Kelly. How are you? I'm so happy to be with you today.
We've been trying to do this for months.
Yep.
And it's hard for nurses to find time to do stuff outside of nursing when they're not both working.
And mommies, yes.
Yes, that too. That is very important. Yeah, well, I'm excited to hear the full story because you gave me like a little Cliff's Notes version when we were talking earlier. And I'm really excited because it's pretty dramatic. So I'm going to let you go ahead.
You want to know everything?
Everything. All the juicy details. How was your pregnancy and your postpartum, the delivery, of course, and all the things that you learned.
Okay. Well, first of all, for me, being pregnant and being a mom was really, really important from the get-go. This is something I was thinking of ever since I was a little girl. That was very, very important to me. When I see women these days, they are in their 30s and 40s, and this is when they're starting to think about it. It was not me. I was very much interested in doing that early on. I wanted to be a young mom, and I got married early. And my first daughter was born when I was 23. I had another one 3 years later, and then my third was born 2.5 years after that. So I have my three daughters now. They are 19, 21, and 24. The last one actually left the nest 2 days ago. I left her in San Diego, and it was heart-wrenching for me. And so I don't have my babies with me anymore. And I think I'm glad to be a labor and delivery nurse because I get to play with other people's babies, but they're still not mine anymore. So that's sad. But as far as, being pregnant and all that, I don't know if it's because I was so young that it was so easy for me, or if I'm just lucky and just a baby machine, but I became pregnant easily. Every time I thought about it, I found out that I was already pregnant. I had super easy pregnancies, except my second one, who made it a little bit more difficult for me. And I'll get into that. And then the deliveries, oh my God, they were the easiest part of the whole thing. So did I tell you that part? I can't recall. So basically my first one, Lilo, I was induced at 7 a.m. and she was born at 10:30 a.m. So 3.5 hours later. My second one, I was induced again at 7 a.m. and she was born at 9:30. And the third took the longest. So the third, I was expecting it to be the same because to me, you go to the hospital and 2.5 hours, 3.5 hours later, you have a baby. That's what I thought labor and delivery was like for everybody. And so she took her time. They were variable decelerations, which showed that there was an issue with the cord, and we had to stop Pitocin for a while. And instead of being born like her sisters in the morning, she was born at 3:15 in the afternoon. So to me, that was such a long delivery. I was like, what's going on with this kid?
You poor thing.
And then
that's a normal third baby delivery.
I know, I agree. And then when I became an L&D nurse and I realized that those poor women were in labor for 2 days, and I was like, oh my God. I was so lucky. I had no idea. So as a summary of my labor and, pregnancies, that's what I can give you in a nutshell. But it was easy for me. I was extremely lucky. to the point where I was hoping, I really wanted to give that gift to someone who was not able to have babies. And unfortunately, that's one of my big regrets, because I thought, it's so easy for me. I really want to do that for someone, but I was not able to.
Yeah. So then, okay, so your pregnancies, I mean, you were in your 20s, so.
Yeah, I know.
So that helps.
Oh, tremendously, yes.
So your pregnancies were relatively easy. Did you have any morning sickness or any annoying symptoms or anything?
I did.
Yeah.
I did for all three. And so every time I thought that, they were girls, because my pregnancies were very, very similar. But what worked for me, because I was sick, and my mom had been sick with me, very, very sick. Like, she had hyperemesis gravidarum. And so that was very dramatic for her. And part of her pregnancy, when she was done, when she had me, she was thinner than before being pregnant. And so I was afraid to have the same thing. And I realized that somebody gave me a good trick, and it worked for me almost immediately. It was to eat a raw apple in the morning. So in my bed, so I would sleep with an apple next to my bed, and that's the first thing I would eat before even getting up or taking my head off the pillow, because it settled my nausea. It worked for me very, very well.
I wish somebody had told me that. Not sure if it would have worked, but I feel like I threw up every single time like I stood up. And I wonder, I think it has to do a little bit with like what is it? Orthostatic hypotension.
Yeah.
Like when your blood pressure drops. Because sometimes I would stand up and I would just like have to lay back down because I was going to pass out. But yeah, that's interesting, to stabilize your blood sugar. And then the only thing left is your blood pressure.
Yeah.
That needs to be stabilized. Yeah. But you don't have both fighting against you. Mm-hmm. So what was the reason that you needed to be induced? And then how many weeks were you when you got induced?
Okay. So for the first one, I was induced at 37 weeks, the second one at 38, and the third at 39. It was 20 some years ago, and I guess it was okay to do that then. It would not be done now, because those pregnancies were very normal. But for my first, I had 3 weeks of contractions night and day. And I was exhausted to the point where I went to see my OB and I begged him for an induction, because I was like, I am going to be so exhausted by the time my baby is born, because I cannot sleep. And so he said, you know what? That's a good reason. Let's induce you.
Wonder what ACOG would say about that today.
No.
That's a good reason. That's funny.
They would say no.
And then what did they do to induce you? Were you already like dilating when you were contracting?
Every time I was already 3 centimeters. Mm-hmm. So I started with spit immediately.
Yeah.
And so within an hour, I was in excruciating pain, and I begged for the epidural, and they were like, what? You just arrived. I want an epidural now. So
that's funny.
So I got it, and they were very surprised when the baby was born so rapidly, and they were like, "Oh, thank God we gave you the epidural."
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Did they break your water?
I recall that for the first. I don't recall for the other two. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so then when you got your epidural, how long after, at least for the first, how long after did you deliver?
Maybe a half hour. Because
folks at home listening, this is not normal.
This is not normal. Not normal.
Please do not adjust your expectations to Marie's experience.
Maybe you want to cancel me right now. Maybe you don't want to skip up.
I mean, everybody has their own experience, but I definitely don't want this to be the expectation, because you're a unicorn. Yeah. You're a unicorn at so many levels. So I remember you had mentioned something about a hurricane. When did that occur?
Oh, so that was my third.
Okay.
So my third. So she was born August 25th, and there were 3 hurricanes surrounding her birth. I want to say the 22nd, the 24th, and the 27th were the 3 hurricanes. And I was watching TV, and I remember seeing all these women who were delivering in shelters, with absolutely no medical help, because the babies were coming and they were in shelters. And that's, in the middle of thousands of people screaming. And I was like, I don't want to deliver in a shelter. I was so scared of it. And anyway, she was born the 25th, so that we were okay on that front. And we had boarded up the house because it was in Florida. And so it was, dangerous, and we could get a tree through a branch or something, any type of projectile through the window. And so we had to protect those windows from that. And so we had protected the house before going to the hospital. And then she was born, and we came back home the next day, so the 26th, just in time before the third hurricane. Well, on that night, we lost power, and it was 100 degrees plus in the house with absolutely no air coming through because all the windows were boarded up.
Oh my gosh.
And so being at home with two little girls and a newborn, 2 days postpartum was no fun at all. We had, we had 2 bathtubs, and we had filled them up with water because we knew that's the only water we would get for we didn't know how long. When we came out of the house, the trees were everywhere on the road, and there was no way for us to actually get out. So it was a good thing we had water. But that was something else. And I remember being lost in the middle of the night in the dark and telling my husband, I can't find my boobs. I was like, come on, that's the one thing you should be able to find. It's on you.
And did you say, honey, I know you can find them. Can you help me, please?
Oh, anyway.
It's hard to feed your baby when you can't find your boobs. That's rough.
Hard. But yeah, it was all in the dark. So I guess I was glad that it was my third, because at least I had some experience. I cannot imagine having that with my first. Being in the dark like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be terrifying. And then, so other than not being able to find your boobs, how was postpartum for you with all 3 of them? Did you have any significant issues or any difficulties?
So I guess also because it was 20 years ago and in Florida, the trend then was an episiotomy no matter what. So I had 3 of those.
Oh.
I can tell you, because I had 3 of those, that they're not as bad as you can imagine. Because
I've had 2, so
it's a straight cut and it healed very well. But I had those donut cushions to sit on because
which we don't do anymore.
Yeah, well, I think that's too bad. Why don't we do it?
Well, because it puts pressure on the stitches.
Oh, really?
And it can cause them to open up. Yeah.
Oh.
And it causes increased swelling.
Oh.
Yeah. They don't do them for hemorrhoids anymore, I don't think either.
Okay.
Or they only do it for a certain amount of time.
Well, I liked them at that time.
I mean, they make you feel better because you don't have to initially sit on your wound.
What was very interesting is that for my first, they were not giving ice packs as a way to heal. But for my second and my third, it had come up as something that was a good idea. And what a difference it did in the healing process.
Oh, yeah.
And so, now when I have patients, and I always tell them, ice is your best friend. It's going to make the whole difference for you. Because I know that for my first, I didn't have it, and how it helped, for the other 2. But postpartum was okay. I thought that breastfeeding was extremely difficult. I really, really had a hard time. I am French, as you can hear from my accent. And in France, it's not something that's pushed as much as in the US to breastfeed. And so in my culture, I was already not very much persuaded, that it was the way to go. So, but I knew that it was good, for the baby. So I was like, okay, let's do it. So I breastfed my first for 3 months, because then I had to go back to work. So it was difficult. Then the pumps were really not working, and it was bad. My second, I breastfed her for 5.5 months. And then I had to have my wisdom teeth pulled. And that was an interesting conversation. My pediatrician told me, you have to stop breastfeeding because everything that, that they will use for anesthesia is going to go to your breast milk. So you must stop. My dentist and my doctor both told me to keep going, because this way my daughter would be sleeping at the same time as me, because she would have some of the anesthesia, and then this way we would both be sleeping at the same time. And then when, she was ready to eat, I would probably feel better by then and be ready to breastfeed her again. So 2 different approaches. I chose to stop breastfeeding because I thought I didn't want to give her anything bad like that.
I don't think either one of those things are really true. I mean, based on what we do in labor and delivery, as far as anesthesia goes, I would imagine that the anesthesia that you would have for the dental would be somewhat similar.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's just a little bit of gas that comes out of your system, and then
Yeah,
you could breastfeed after that.
I agree with you.
But that's so interesting that, I mean, I remember back then because I'm old too. I've been around a while. I remember when people used to say that.
Mhm.
And now we do stuff that's completely
Yeah,
different. But
completely.
that's really funny.
And so on my third, I was like, okay, I'm going to breastfeed forever because I can and I have time. And so I breastfed her for a whole 9 months.
Wow.
But I thought that it was difficult the whole time. I mean, there was
Yeah, it's not
never a
easy.
position for me that felt good. I always felt pain. It was
Mm.
difficult. And then for my third, my breast got engorged, and I don't know if it was because of the hurricane and all that, and the fact that I couldn't find my boobs. But but
That could be it.
maybe I didn't feed her as much as I needed. Maybe she was also the smallest, and so maybe she was not as strong as the other two. Anyhow, my breast got engorged, and it hurt so bad. I remember taking warm showers, trying to express some of my milk. What ended up working for me was the cabbage leaves, which were unbelievable. And I remember that my breasts were hot enough to actually cook them
Oh my goodness.
because I put them on and I removed them when they were cooked like an hour later. And I was like, oh, I'm making cabbage soup with my breast.
Did you eat them?
No.
Cabbage stew. Did you fry an egg on your boobs after that? Oh my gosh.
But it worked. It took, some of the swelling down, and then she was able to feed again. And so,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Wow. My goodness. So when you had your babies, you were working in marketing. You said you went back with the first at 3 months.
Yeah.
What did you finished breastfeeding at 5 months with the second because of your surgery, but had you gone back to work?
So I had, but then I have an interesting story for the second one. Actually, when I became pregnant, I was halfway through to my MBA. So I had started my MBA, which was paid by my employer. And then I lost my job because they got rid of everybody in marketing. And I lost my job. I was 3 months into my MBA.
Wow.
And the one speech that we got at the beginning of the MBA, because it was all young professionals, taking the program. It was a 2-year program at night and during the weekends for people who worked. And we were told, you're at this age where you may be thinking of having children. Don't do it because it's a 2-year, very intensive program. You're all working. Don't do it. I was laughing, I had a 2-year-old at the time. I was like, yeah, it's not happening to me. 3 months later, I was pregnant. and then I lost my job. So I lost my job. I continued doing my MBA, and my second daughter was born right in the middle of the MBA. Wow. In January. So it was December through the program. And because I had gestational diabetes with her, and at the time it was also different. The way they did it is that they gave you a calorie counter, and they were like, okay, you need to stop there. They tried to kill me, I think, because they told me to eat 1,500 calories a day, which was really not enough. The good thing about it is that I stopped gaining weight in September. She was born end of January, and I stopped gaining weight in September. And my belly was growing, my butt was becoming smaller, and and I came out of there, and my jeans were falling off of me when I came out of the hospital. So, but that's the reason why I was able to breastfeed her for longer, because at the time I was just going to school and not working.
Oh,
so to answer that. When my third was born, I was not working. I was taking a break because I wanted to focus on the kids. So
that's amazing that you could do that. That does help with breastfeeding too.
Yeah.
So then when you were doing your 1,500 calories a day, which guys don't do that.
Don't do that.
That's not recommended. And I guess I'm just wondering, because I know how nauseous I would get if I didn't eat. How did you manage that?
So
are you pregnant and planning a hospital birth? You don't need a birth plan. You need a birth vision. In my opinion, birth plans set you up for failure. Yep, I said it. Hear me out before you turn off this podcast. You may think that by downloading a generic birth plan, it means you're in control. The truth is, it's not that simple. No one can control exactly how their birth will go. There are way too many variables. What every pregnant person wants is to walk into the hospital pregnant and to walk out with a healthy newborn in their arms. The journey in between is the murky part. It's hard to know what issues might come up that need to be addressed. If you focus your energy on a birth vision rather than giving your power to a birth plan, you can empower yourself to make the best choices for you and your baby. That's why you need to get into my Empowered Hospital Birth program. As a labor nurse and mindset coach, I can help guide you through the process of maintaining the calm autonomy that will help you achieve the birth vision you desire. In my Empowered Hospital Birth program, I will help you identify the source of anxiety you have surrounding hospital birth, fill in knowledge gaps to make sure that you are fully informed and confident, learn key phrases so you can better communicate with your medical team, emotionally process your fears so that they don't hold power over you. Go to kellyhoff.com/empowered to book a free 30-minute private birth vision call, where we will identify your top fears and must-haves and gain clarity on exactly how you want to feel in the birth space. That's kellyhoff.com/empowered. I'm honored to be a part of your birth journey.
I would eat little portions all day long. I think that's what was working for me, because otherwise I was nauseated all the time as well. But I managed to be under my 1500, and then I would finish with ice cream for the day. That was like, that was my little pleasure. I was not too bad as far as I was hungry. I was really hungry, but I did manage my diabetes beautifully, my gestational diabetes beautifully. But as soon as they were born, as soon as she was born, I had no knowledge of all that. So I thought that I was diabetic for good. And so when they brought me the menu at the hospital, they were like, what would you like? And I said, well, what is recommended for me? Because, I'm gestational diabetic. And she goes, no, honey, you're done with that. Your baby's born. You can have whatever you want. I said, whatever I want. And I ordered 5 desserts.
Good. I mean, so I just took a class. There's a class that we take like every 6 months at the other hospital I work at. And they're talking about the first 48 hours, how even if you're gestational diabetic, you're more than likely going to have normal blood sugar levels. And then if you have to tweak your insulin because you're diabetic before, then they start, figuring that out. But there's kind of like a honeymoon period.
Really?
So that would have been the perfect time to do that. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm so glad I did the right thing.
Also not recommending that, but do you? I think everybody does a little bit of a celebratory eating after delivery. I made my husband go to Wendy's and get a bunch of junior bacon cheeseburgers. And he basically brought me a bag of junior bacon cheeseburgers. And I think I had 1 or 2 and then gave the rest to the nurses. But yeah, everybody deserves to have their celebratory meal after they deliver. Yeah. And so did you have any issues? Like, how did you feel supported after you delivered? Did you have like family come? How did that look for you? Especially as, having a career or being in school.
So my mom came over from France for my first, after she was born. She missed the delivery. And then after she left, I found a fantastic nanny. She was 78 and she had 6 children. And she was the most dynamic 78-year-old I had met. She was on the floor playing with my daughter. She was so cute. And she had a little book and she wrote absolutely everything that Lily was doing. So I still have it. I love it. And every time I came home from work, she would read her book, to make sure she had not forgotten anything. So today we read this and today we did this and we went to the beach and we did this. And so it was wonderful.
Yeah, because they didn't have smartphones back then, right?
No.
So we couldn't be sending pictures. Now my nanny sends me photos.
Yeah, no, she did not have a phone that took pictures for sure. So then for my second, my mother-in-law came because my mom was not able to come. And then for my third, my mom came. So
did you have the nanny throughout, or was it just for the
No, it
beginning?
was just for the first one. Then later on, when they were older, I had a Thai nanny who was an au pair, and she was wonderful. And we're still friends to this day. And now we have
Aw.
little twin girls, and it's so cute. She's still part of the family. But yeah, she helped with doing a lot
That's
of things.
awesome.
And often when I came home exhausted after work, she had made dinner, like a Thai dinner. Oh my God, this is
Wow.
awesome.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just think it's so important to have that good support system
Mm-hmm.
after you deliver.
Yeah.
And, somebody that is able to care for your children as well as you care for them when you go to work, because it's so stressful to leave your babies. And then, so now that you're a labor and delivery nurse and you've had time to reflect on your experiences, what are some of the things that come up for you that you see what we're doing now, and either what wisdom do you give to moms when you are being a labor and delivery nurse, or what things do you wish that you could have done differently, or both?
Well, I think because my inductions were so successful, I don't wish that anything would have been done differently, but I guess it would have been cool to have my labor start naturally, and then, who knows how it would have been. I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but I'm also the daughter of two anesthesiologists. And so for me, an epidural is almost essential because I did not grow up with pain. Like every time I had pain somewhere, they were there for me, to do something about it. And my dad was also one of the first anesthesiologists to actually practice the epidural in the late 60s, early 70s. So, I am very, very aware of the pain that comes with labor, and I'm always helping my patients through that. This is really my priority. Whether they choose a natural childbirth or a delivery with an epidural, to me, their pain control is really, really, really my priority always. I think because it was so important to me as well, to make sure that this was in check.
So then how does your background with your family being anesthesiologists, and I don't know if I want to say pain control, but pain management, I think, because I think part of what anesthesia does isn't they don't just medicate, I think that they practice helping the whole person manage their pain.
Yeah.
How does that come into play in your practice? How do you feel like that has helped you? And what kinds of things do you do, especially if your patient isn't ready for an epidural, decided that they don't want one?
So I feel like in the whole process, very often the partners feel like they are useless, and they are dealing with the pain of the laboring patient with so much pain themselves. They're very, very frustrated because they're not able to help. And so I often give them a job. I teach them how to do counter pressure. And if the laboring patient is sitting on a bowl, then I place the dad strategically on a chair behind her. And I said, look, this is what you're going to do. And I demonstrate, and then he does it. And very often the woman is like, okay, no, I liked it better when Marie did it. So I'm like, okay, I need more training for you. Listen to me, do it this way. So we just, make it work. And we also change positions all the time, because very often we realize, by changing position, that some of the contractions are not felt the same way. And so we try to find positions that work better. So between that and counter pressure and sometimes dancing, belly dancing, I felt that helps a lot. So if you pop into my room, sometimes you'll see people belly dancing to the sound of Shakira, whatever. So that I think puts their mind someplace else on fun, and that makes them, at least at the beginning of labor, makes the contractions feel a little bit less intense.
Yeah. I'm going to come in and try to see some of your belly dancing strategies, because I don't know that I've actually gone as far as Shakira for pain management, but I really like that. So next time you do that, if I'm on shift with you, come at me. I want to see that.
Yeah.
The Shakira method. That's awesome. I know that when we talked a couple of times before we managed to actually have a successful scheduling of this episode, You had talked about how the method that is utilized in France for delivering babies vaginally, that there are some techniques that are just a little bit different and that they have a very low C-section rate. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that a little bit or let me
Sure.
know what you do know as far as how they're doing that.
What I know, because I don't know much. As you know, I became a nurse here, so I have not worked there. So take it with a grain of salt. But I do have one of my mom's best friend is actually an anesthesiologist in a labor center in Paris. And so I get a lot of my input from her. What she explains is that the laboring down process is a lot longer in France than it is here. So we allow the babies to come a lot lower in the pelvis before we start pushing. And so the women there are expected to push 30 minutes or less. So that's
my expectation.
That's the goal. I know. However, this is not what happens. You know it as well as I do. You know, sometimes we push for hours on end and it's not good for the pelvic floor and the life of, this particular pelvic floor in the future, because it's going to create all kinds of issues. But this is what the doctors are asking us to do here. So we must follow that. But I think it's something to be taken into consideration to make this laboring down process a lot longer than it is, so that we can lower the C-section rate and increase the rate of vaginal deliveries. Yeah. Successful ones.
And I think both you and I have similar expectations when it comes to pushing. So there's a lot that we do before that laboring down process even begins to try to avoid the pushing for 3 to 4 hours. And I think probably you would agree that if you and I are pushing with somebody for over an hour or so, something else is going on. Right? So we're going to be doing a lot of different interventions to try to, probably most of the time it's the baby's position, but in those rare occasions, it could be the cord or it could be the size or something like that.
Yeah, we had a surprise the other day. Definitely, we were expecting a baby to be not too big, but there was no way this baby was coming out. And after 2.5 hours of pushing, actually, the doctor I was working with came up to the patient and said, "If you were pushing with somebody else, I would say, let's give it another half hour, an hour, but you're pushing with Marie, so I'm advising a C-section." I was like, oh, this is bad. But
this should have happened by now.
Yeah, it should have happened.
And was that baby huge when it came out?
Yeah, 10 pounds.
Oh my goodness. Yes, that was the one. Yeah, I remember I was there and you're like,
so there's not much we could have done. So that was best for everybody.
Yeah, that's rough. I usually ask if you could go back and talk to yourself at the beginning of this process when you decided to have children, or any crucial part during that process that you felt like you could have benefited from your sage advice from where you are in life now. What would you go back and tell yourself?
Probably to rest a lot more than I did, because I was the typical young mom wanting to do everything when my kids were sleeping, trying to do the laundry and make the house look impeccable, things that really don't matter. Because who cares? Really, who cares?
Yeah.
You're going to be a lot more efficient, a lot more fun, a lot more pleasant for anyone in your environment if you're rested.
Yeah, absolutely.
So who cares if it's a little bit dirty, It really doesn't matter.
So that sleep when the baby sleeps.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Also, listen to yourself. Stop listening to everybody who wants to give you advice. Seriously, listen to yourself, because I think listening to your guts is what gets you where you're supposed to be. Very often, I took my kids to the pediatrician, or everybody around me was like, she's fine. And then there was really something going on, because I could feel it right here. And I was like, there is something. I think a lot of people tend to give advice, and they're not always welcome, and they're not always true. And so I think listening to yourself is the most important thing you can do as a parent.
Yeah.
And learn to say, I'm sorry very early on, because you're going to mess up, because we're human. And by saying sorry, you're not demeaning yourself. You're actually showing your kids how important it is to say I'm sorry. So you're teaching them something along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. So I'm a little curious, when you say that your father was one of the first anesthesiologists to do epidurals.
Yeah.
Did he work in labor?
No. So he did, but that was not the origin of that. Have you heard of General de Gaulle?
Maybe if I saw it written.
No.
Because if I see it written, I'm not going to pronounce it like that.
He was a very famous French president. And he needed to have major surgery, and they weren't sure how his heart was going to react to the anesthesia. And so he got one of the first epidurals done in France. And so it was, of course, they talked about it a lot, how he was completely awake during his major surgery and how it was so impressive. And so my dad heard about that, and being an anesthesiologist himself, he was like, yeah, I need to learn that. Absolutely need to learn that. French doctors were not doing it. So he went to Belgium where they were teaching the technique, and he learned it and brought it back in France. And, he used it ever since. So he was one of the main physicians who knew how to do that. And he was sent in many different hospitals in France to teach it. And then I think it was in 72. Yeah, in 72, he was actually invited with my mom. They were not married yet. But with my mom, they were invited to a hospital in New York to also teach the technique. And so,
which hospital?
Huh?
Do you know which hospital?
I don't know it on top of my head, but I have all the paperwork that my mom actually brought me recently that shows the letter of invitation, and then the letter at the end that says thank you for all your help and all that. And that was pretty emotional when I saw that. My dad passed away 4 years ago, and so I had not seen these papers, and my mom brought them to me recently. So I can tell you that later.
It's so interesting to me because I know that I've worked at least one hospital that in the area was one of the first to use the epidural.
Yeah.
And so I think I remember the other hospital that I worked at in New York was one of the first to use. So I wonder if you went to the hospital where I was working. Now, hospitals in New York merged and changed names and all that stuff. So it might be named differently. And because I can't remember when it merged. I really think it's so cool to find out the history of some of these procedures.
But so I don't think I told you I was born in the Caribbean completely by chance, because what happened was that my parents had put their names on a list of people to be sent, of doctors and nurses to be sent anywhere in the world where there was a need. So they wanted to do some volunteering, and they were sent to, my mom was 38 weeks pregnant with me when they got the call saying, you're leaving in 2 days to Dominica. And so they packed up and they went, and she was 38 weeks pregnant. That's crazy. But she always said, you know what? I felt safe because I was with your dad and I knew you could give me an epidural. So my dad left with his little suitcase, and he told my mom, you know what? Even if I have to give it to you in the airplane, I will. He had delivered many babies in his life, and he was like, I can do that. But you'll have an epidural. Wow. So we arrived in this little island in the middle of the Caribbean between Martinique and Guadeloupe, completely lost. It was a British island, and my dad gave my mom an epidural there.
Wow. Did he deliver you? Was it in a hospital?
No, there was another doctor there who delivered me. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's amazing. And then what? Did they just stay and take care of other patients while your mom was
Yeah.
Or did your mom just pack you in
No, my mom stayed there, and the entire island came to see me because I was the first white baby to be born on the island. So everybody came to see the white baby.
Oh my goodness.
There were no private rooms. It was just 2 curtains. And so people would just pull the curtain, look at me and go.
Wow. I don't know what language they speak in Dominica.
They speak English.
They do? Yeah. Okay. And do your parents speak English too?
Yeah.
Wow, that's so funny. Well, Marie, this is fascinating. Do you have any other fun stories that are birth related about your family?
I don't think so. Well, no, I do. My brother has triplets. My brother has triplets.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they are turning 30 this year. So,
oh my gosh.
yeah.
Where were they born?
They were born in France. So basically, the easiness I had to become pregnant was the opposite for my poor sister-in-law. She did nine in vitro fertilization rounds, and it was crazy. Nothing was working. And the ninth one actually worked. She had given up. She was like, I'm never going to be pregnant. They had decided to go adopt a little girl in Peru. They were ready. They had their plane tickets and they were going to leave in 2 months. And she was pregnant with the triplets.
Did they also adopt the baby?
They did not. No. It was very early on. So,
yeah.
But yeah. So.
Wow. Well, is there anything else that we didn't cover that you wanted to talk about?
You can. No.
No.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Okay, but we haven't had a chance to say Sacre Bleu. I want to hear you say it.
Sacre Bleu.
Sacre Bleu.
Yeah.
Okay, so I said it wrong.
That's okay. It's okay.
I'll work on it.
I don't mind.
Well, Marie, thank you so much. I love hearing about all your fun stories and all the history and the hurricane.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Thank you so much for tuning into my podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future episodes. Don't forget to share the podcast with a friend who can benefit from the valuable insights that we share here. And if you could take a moment to leave a 5-star rating and review, it would mean the world to me. If you're ready to work one-on-one with me to embark on a transformational journey towards a confident and empowered hospital birth experience, go to kellyhoff.com/empowered and enroll in my Empowered Hospital Birth Coaching Program. Together, we'll create a roadmap to a birth experience that you'll cherish forever. That's KELLYHOF.com/empowered. Let's make your birth experience extraordinary.